I am so excited to be here this afternoon to celebrate 5 years of amazing progress on the Great American Rail Trail. I am Brandy Horton. I'm the Vice President of Communications at Trails Conservancy. Kevin, who are you?
Yeah, I'm Kevin Bell. I'm the project manager for the Great American Rail Trail.
Well, this is going to be, I think, quite a fun conversation today. We're going to take a look at, you and me and a handful of other folks. We're really like, how do we capture the impact of 5 years of something as big and as amorphous at the same time as the Great American Rail Trail? And so we're going to go on a conversation today about all the ways that the idea of the Great American Rail Trail has created really transformative change in places, impact that wouldn't have happened otherwise. But before we get into it, Kevin, what is the Great American Rail Trail? There's, I think, some folks who might not know.
Yeah, 5 years into this thing, I'm still enjoying explaining what this exciting vision is. We're working on the nation's first cross-country multi-use trail. It'll connect all the way between Washington, D.C., where I am currently, and Washington State, over 12 states, which are on this map on the screen here, and the District of Columbia. It's over 2,068 miles on the ground currently, and we've got just about over 1,600 miles left to build. But that means we're 55% complete on this thing, which is really exciting. And I feel like people can see that vision when we talk about this being more than halfway done. Since we started this project in 2019, we've added about 125 miles to the route, which is really exciting. And even looking into the future, we've got about 160 miles in the pipeline right now, that we're tracking for development. And every year we keep adding more onto that list.
It's really incredible. And I think when we talk about 55% complete, it's just so big. It's hard for people to wrap their heads around that. But we know there's trail on the ground in every single state. And there are a handful of segments, right, Kevin, that are like more than 100 miles, which is incredible. People can like do the adventure, right?
Yeah, we know there's at least three, and we know that there's going to be hopefully another one opening next year of 100 plus miles. I've gotten to ride my bike all the way between Pittsburgh and Washington, D.C., which is one of those exciting examples. And we have a few more. But yeah, we have 159 existing trails along the route that people can go out and explore. You do not have to do this entire thing all at once or ever, but we are excited for the people who do. But really, this can be there's 50 million people that live within 50 miles of this trail. This is a lot of people's backyard trail. This is a lot of people's long weekend adventure. So it's really exciting.
Well, and I think we have seen, we are both very lucky that we get to go all over the country and experience pieces of this trail and the communities that are benefiting from this trail. And a lot of folks will say, that being part of something bigger than what's maybe happening in their backyard, even for the folks who live locally, is such a motivator. It's a reason for them to get excited, to get involved, to say, I might go dust off my bike or find those sneakers and get out there and try this in a way that I wasn't motivated to do in the past.
It's inspirational when I hear people in like the middle of the country saying, for a kid to think about the trail that they go on, you go this way, you're going to go all the way to the nation's capital. You go this way, you're going to go all the way to the Pacific Ocean. It's really cool. And like to have that vision as a kid, like that opens up your ideas and of what could be.
Well, and the economic potential, right, of what
Yeah.
I think is so powerful for folks. And we're going to dig into that a little bit today too. Just really tangible results that we're seeing in places where folks are orienting their strategy. Like, how are we going to bolster our town, bring something new to our town, and the economic potential? There's new data out from the Bureau of Economic Analysis about outdoor recreation as a whole and the outdoor industry. And it's now continues to be the fastest growing sector in America. And I think the Great American Rail Trail embodies that in so many ways.
Yeah, we did an analysis on the screen here that it's about $230 million in new visitor spending annually across the route when it's completed. And I think that benefits every town along the way. That's 2,500 new jobs, $22 million plus in new tax revenue. And that is not insignificant, especially in small towns in America.
Yeah, well, we're going to get ready here to hop on into our first segment because there are so many, it's really countless impact. We hear from people all over the country all the time, partners, professionals, elected officials, about just how excited they are, how necessary this is. And I think when we came up with, how we were going to introduce this to the world, because this has been, I think one thing we should say, it's been a long-standing project. We are celebrating 5 years of progress, but really we should be celebrating 40 years of progress because the idea for this came really organically to the organization as rail trail conversions were starting to happen at a faster pace in the late 80s, the early 90s, and into the 2000s. But over the past 5 years with this concerted effort, I don't think we could have imagined the groundswell of enthusiasm and support. We were saying we're introducing this iconic piece of American infrastructure. We want it to be celebrated like the national parks and the long distance trails that are so beloved in our country. And I think 5 years in, we're seeing that. And so we're just gonna have some great conversations about what that looks like and what that means. And the first one is in Council Bluffs, Iowa, where we're gonna take a look at how the Great American Rail Trail has been an anchor in their economic revitalization and their community development. So let's take a look.
Bike riding in Iowa has been such a huge boon to tourism. Adding the national trail is just awesome.
One of the things that I really appreciate about this area is that we can get by foot and by bike just about anywhere in town.
What I like to think about is the big idea of I could get on this trail in my town and I could go for hundreds of miles in either direction. Council Bluffs has had a long history of connecting the country. We had the Lewis and Clark expedition, we had the Mormon Trail come through here, we had the Transcontinental Railroad, so we're not surprised that the Great American Rail Trail had to come through Council Bluffs.
Both the Bob Carey pedestrian bridge and the Baby Bob, being a part of the Great American Rail Trail brings national relevance. It actually helps move the conversation forward about connectivity. Now we're moving more towards a street network that will continue to connect Omaha neighborhood, people to business, people to schools.
What we like to tell people is that First Ave is more than a trail. It's recreation, it's transportation, it's a community asset. We have over $100 million of development in the approval stages right now, happening either directly on the Great American Rail Trail or within 100 feet. It creates a new, safe and fast way for pedestrians and cyclists to get across our community.
The trail is a sense of pride. It's a beautiful trail and it's easy to get around and it's such a great connector. To be able to get people through our downtown, I think it's huge.
Most of our walks will actually originate from here. We'll walk from the studio, either going into Omaha or down the First Avenue Trail. And I was amazed at how many people wanted to come together as a community and to walk, get to know each other, get to know their neighbors.
Well, Kevin and I have had the privilege of visiting Council Bluffs, me just a handful of times this year, Kevin many times this year and prior to that. But that sentiment of people wanting to go out on a walk and get to know each other and this national vision providing that local opportunity for connection is so powerful for me. But before we get into that, I want to welcome Liz Thorstensen. She's joining us for this part of the conversation. She is RTC's Vice President of Trail Development and an expert in economic development. So how this infrastructure can really spark and spur economic revitalization is a big part of the change I think that we can make. So Liz, when you hear the stories from Council Bluffs and all these places we go, what comes to mind for you?
Oh, I love it. It's meshing all of my favorite fields and interests together. One of my favorite parts of the Council Bluffs initiative with First Ave is that they really started to think about the growth of their region coming out of Omaha, metropolitan region, and thinking about that growth that was going to happen, the change, and that they didn't want to just be disconnected in a suburb. They wanted to be on the receiving end of that growth. And so they started to think about how do we position ourselves to be a place where people really want to live and be and still be really close to Omaha for jobs. And so I think they were so smart to think about this connection and the development that they're spurring and incentivizing along the trail so that it's this wonderful place that people want to live and work and play, and you can connect over to Omaha on the other side of the river. You can live there. And it's really about your quality of life, of all aspects of your life. And so to me, it sounds, to coin a term from one of our trail partners, it sounds like Trailtopia, which sounds wonderful.
Well, and they've got the Great American Rail Trail signs, which we don't have a whole segment about, but I think a really huge milestone for us at the 5-year anniversary is that we have 600 signs out on the Great American Rail Trail. And so people who live alongside the First Ave Trail and who visit that trail now know that their segment is part of this big national vision. And that's such a huge part of getting people excited and building that support. So that was just a major milestone for us to be able to get all those signs and those markers out on the trail. Kevin, other places you've been, where are we seeing this happen? What's happening out there?
Just yet, because as you said, I was there many times this year. People said I should start paying taxes there. But that's good. There's a lot of good things happening. But you saw at the end of that video, there's a row of townhouses, and it blew my mind when we were there a few months ago that the front doors to those townhouses face the trail, and they're really calling it trail-oriented development. And the last I heard a month ago, one of those was still for sale. They were doing the hard sell for me to buy it. But if you're trying to get trail-oriented property in Council Bluffs, Iowa, it might still be available. But there are lots of other places where communities are taking advantage of the economic revitalization potential of this trail. I'm thinking of a place like Powell, Wyoming, who is working on a section of this trail, and it's actually being led by the Powell Economic Partnership. They're taking the lead on this, and I think it's because locally and regionally, they see this coming directly from the economic development perspective, and I think that's really cool.
It's so powerful. And Liz, I'd love for you to reflect on the Great American Rail Trail and just elsewhere in the country, the different agents. I think a lot of times people think trails, they think conservation, they think recreation, but I think what we're seeing as the Great American Rail Trail is developed and as trail networks are developing all over the place, that different agencies are showing up because I think they see different potential. And how do you think something like the Great American Rail Trail is helping that move along?
Well, even going back to Kevin mentioning Wyoming just a second ago, when going back, I don't know, 5, 6 years, we were just reminiscing a few minutes before getting on camera here. When we were doing the route planning with each state, this Wyoming really informed where the route would go by the economic priorities of the state. So, there's obviously lots of different things to consider, especially like topography, and wind is a big consideration in Wyoming. So lots of conversations with, kind of all the movers and shakers of Wyoming, but ultimately, deciding that because they were already investing, some economic revitalization efforts through sort of the western north-south corridor of the state, that's really where they wanted the route to go through for that kind of that last leg as you go into Montana. So just even the prioritization of that, I thought was just really important, and something we always try to remind folks about, that, you can think about the environmental aspects and the practical aspects of siting things, and from a design perspective, all that, but geography, but more and more seeing that economic prioritization. And when I used to work in economic development, and you would say, trails are economic development, no one would really take you super seriously. And now, when I am still following all my economic development colleagues, thousands of different professionals across the country, a lot of the things that they're leading with when they share their updates, like on social media, LinkedIn, it's about, a cool investment project, but the pictures they show are, and here's the progress of the trail that's really flanking and the kind of the capstone of this whole redevelopment project. And you just wouldn't have seen that, 10, even 5, but like especially 10, 15 years ago. So I think everyone's getting it, right? You see a trail and you think, that's not just somewhere I want to visit, that's somewhere I want to live and, invest my personal time and, income and everything, that I invest in a community.
Well, and we now have the data to back it up. We know that trails create jobs. We know that trails create new tax revenue. They create new visitor spending. So it's a win on every level for places to want to tie into this. And I think one of the things that we're hearing from folks is like, why am I not on the route? How do I plug into
Yeah.
this incredible economic engine? And
Yeah.
with that, we're going to move on to our next conversation, and we're going to take a look at, I think all of this community development, all of this economic revitalization, the energy that it sparks, that this grand vision sparks, brings people together in different ways. And so our next kind of transformative impact of the Great American Rail Trail is looking at partnership and looking at how being part of something bigger than you can really bring folks together to work on the challenging stuff, the stuff that hasn't been built yet, the hard conversations. So let's hop on over to Washington and see what's happening there.
I'm very excited about the Great American Rail Trail because it's just such a specific, simple to grasp vision, and we just need to have a few more local bits of it for all of us to grab onto.
The Great American Rail Trail will overlay many of our local trails, including the Burke-Gilman Trail, the Palouse Cascades Trail, and the Snoqualmie River Valley Trail. Additionally, cyclists will hop on the ferry down at the Seattle Ferry Terminal and take the ferry across the Puget Sound, hop off, connect with the Sound to Pacific Trail, which is the last leg of their journey to the Pacific Ocean if they're heading west. If they're heading east, it's the first leg of their journey.
The ferry is really an extension of our highway system, and we need a highway for bikes. So I think that having this ferry being on the Great American Rail Trail is just more of the amazing experiences that you can have along the way. We get, when is this next section open? When am I going to be able to bike commute from my home in Renton to my office in Bellevue? And as I think about East Trail's role as a major north-south spine of the Leaf Line network, the enthusiasm for the connections that East Trail's going to make, including connecting to the Mountains to Sound Trail that goes east-west and allows folks to connect into Seattle, that's the importance of a regional trail network and a coalition.
One of the perks of my job is that I get to be out on our local trail systems all the time, and nothing brings me greater joy than walking down the trail and seeing a kid learning how to ride a bike for the first time, or a family taking an afternoon walk, or elderly citizens getting out and enjoying the day together. When I see these connections being made, when I see these memories being made, it makes me so happy.
When I think about the Great American Rail Trail, it's about connecting communities on a cross-continental scale. It's really exciting. When I think about our corner here in Washington State, it reflects the efforts of so many people to say, we need a bike bridge here. We need to find funding for this trail in this section of the state. And it's just really exciting to think about traversing Washington on a bike in that way.
I love that example from Washington for so many reasons. One, it's just beautiful to see all of that infrastructure and all of the people using it and all those people on the ferry. I know from our team that was on the ground, it was kind of a little like rainy and chilly that day. And you still have a ton of people out there using the ferry to get from one place to another. But it's a state that has so much kind of different topography. It's a big state. People are kind of separated in different ways, and that the Great American Rail Trail is bringing them together to tackle kind of statewide solutions to getting this trail corridor done is so powerful and such an example for the whole country. I'm going to bring in now Ken Bryan, RTC's Senior Strategist for External Relations. He does a lot of work all along the Great American Rail Trail, and so much of that work requires partnership. And when we think about how the Great American Rail Trail is a tool to really just get people excited about working together and the power in that, Ken, what comes up for you?
Yeah, I do think partnerships are key. And what's going to make this thing even better is all the partnerships that we build along the way. And one partnership that kind of comes to mind is in North Judson, Indiana. And that's where they're working on their regional system, but they're able to leverage the Great American Rail Trail. There was a redevelopment commission there locally that was liquidating a corridor that they owned, and they were able to leverage the Great American Rail Trail into a free 9-mile easement that both extends their local trail system as well as a segment in the Great American Rail Trail. And so that would have not have been possible if we weren't helping each other out along the way.
Well, and you look at kind of the example again, kind of from Washington, and they're saying, my community, this community is part of this cross, transcontinental project. Does that come up, Kev and Ken, in your conversations for folks of like why they're showing up? So I think sometimes things feel hard when they're too big, but then sometimes things feel hard when you're all alone. And so how does the Great American Rail Trail help?
I think we're in a really good spot with a couple examples in Washington and Montana, where in Washington on the Puget Sound to Pacific corridor, which goes all the way out, that's 3 counties, 10 plus towns and cities, multiple tribes. They received a RAISE grant in 2022, to help them build out their section of the trail. And it was all focused around the vision of the Great American Rail Trail. There have been works for the Olympic Discovery Trail, for the Sound of Pacific. All of that together, the Great American Rail Trail really brought that in focus for them all to rally around one thing. Now there's a similar partnership over 6 counties in Montana that's going for a RAISE grant to do the exact same thing, plan their whole section between Butte and the Idaho border. And these counties certainly want to find ways to work together, but this was a thing that they could all rally around, that they saw between the larger towns of Missoula to the small places like Deer Lodge. They're really coming together around that vision.
Well, and we talk about Iowa a lot. We talk about some of these states a lot because they're doing just such incredible work. You'll hear a trend when you hear us talk about the Great American Rail Trail. There's some real front runners out there. Iowa, Ken, I want to poke you on Iowa because I also think that what's happening in Iowa and some of the wins that we're seeing are really because of how people are coming together. So what's happening there?
Yeah, so with our local partner in Iowa, the Iowa Bicycle Coalition, and Luke Hoffman is doing an excellent job there. Working with them to help create local bond initiatives, right? And so the Great American Rail Trail is one of those things that they can promote during their bond initiative to help sell the concept. And so one just passed in Story County, Iowa, another one in Johnson County, Iowa, which will provide not only money for local trails, but as well as help close some of the gaps in the Great American Rail Trail. So, they're an important partner, and that's a way of, leveraging those partnerships for funds to help acquire and build trails.
Yeah, 100%. And I think we're also seeing people learn from each other. An ingenious activity that I would say the team introduced a few years ago was bringing together state conversations about the Great American Rail Trail. So we're bringing planners, professionals, advocates, elected officials from all over each of these 12 states to talk about priorities, challenges, and we're watching relationships be formed that you're like, oh, you don't know each other? You should know each other. You're doing really important work together. And so to be able to serve in that role, to bring folks together for the greater good is just incredibly powerful. We're going to move into our next conversation, and it's just such a good segue from partnership to that end outcome. And I think, Ken, the example you shared from these ballot initiatives in Iowa, it's exactly what we're talking about. We need that collaboration to move the advocacy forward in this work and to secure the funding and to secure the political will. So we're going to take a look at Steubenville, Ohio, and how the Great American Rail Trail is part of their big push to get the Market Street Bridge done.
Ever since the Trails Conservancy has spearheaded the Great American Rail Trail initiative, leaders within our town who have been pro-bike and ped have been trying to get the Great American Rail Trail to come through Steubenville.
The Great American Rail Trail has the opportunity to connect us from Washington to Washington, but getting the Market Street Bridge redone means even more to Steubenville itself.
The Market Street Bridge has been connecting Ohio to West Virginia for about 100 years, and it's a vital connection between our historic downtown and West Virginia.
We see walking and biking trails as really being key to revitalization and key to a healthy community, especially a younger community.
I feel a sense of urgency around the issue of biking, walking in Steubenville and honestly beyond, around this issue of safety and accessibility for the people who live here. If you have a safe community for biking and walking, then you have a safe community for every other level of transportation above that.
What is necessary is having a dedicated bike and pedestrian route to become part of a nationally recognized trail. This is the only place here in Steubenville, Ohio, where that can happen. Often we see that bike and ped advocacy and being able to put trails through towns has great economic revitalization impacts. And maintaining bike and pedestrian infrastructure can often be far cheaper than maintaining automobile-only infrastructure.
We see the trail as being a massive economic driver for the community as well, not only for guests, but also for those living here that would want to stay here or relocate here because they'd be on the trail.
I think we need to rally people behind this idea of the Great American Rail Trail and what that can mean for our community, for families, for getting more people to Steubenville.
I also just love riding my bike and walking with my kids and with my neighbors. So anything that invites people to move outside and to move outside with a buddy is good in my book.
I love that video. I love seeing the kids and the families biking, and I hate that they have to do it in the road through downtown Steubenville. And I can't wait to see that connection be made, because that's what we're talking about, right? And there'll be, you know, on-road protected infrastructure, and sometimes that's what it takes to make the connection, but none of it matters if that bridge doesn't get done. We are welcoming in Maryann Fowler. She is RTC's Senior Strategist for Policy Advocacy, but I also have to say she is one of the early visionaries of this project. I think Kevin and I and everyone agrees, if it wasn't for Maryann, that we wouldn't even be having this conversation today, because she kept the vision alive for a long time, even when folks were not sure that it was possible or that it would happen. So on every level, we are so grateful for Maryann's leadership and partnership, and especially on the advocacy front, Maryann. So tell us, you know, Market Street, these bridges, these huge projects, they do not happen just because people wish them to happen.
People have to advocate for them. And advocacy, of course, or advocate is just a wonky word for ask. You have to ask, and you have to ask in a thoughtful, meaningful, strategic way. And one of the things the Great American Rail Trail has done, it's emboldened people along this route to ask, and to ask in a way that is going to guarantee success, and is guaranteeing success, particularly for the large projects. I mean, my gosh, we have America's great rivers to cross. The Great American Rail Trail is crossing the country. It's not going with the flow, it's crossing. So we have to cross the Ohio, and that's what the Steubenville video is about. But we have to also, we're crossing the Mississippi. We're crossing the, sort of the combination there, Kevin, maybe you know better whether it's actually the Missouri or the Platte when we get into.
Across both of those rivers, yeah.
All right, and we have to cross the Columbia. We saw a visual of that earlier in the introduction. But yes, so people have asked, people have advocated for the funding to include bike ped trail crossings of these great rivers, and we're getting them. And that's the exciting thing, we're getting them. We're also advocating for, people are advocating for the trail to be built through their community. They're advocating for the funds, state and federal, to fund the trails. They're advocating for the programs that have traditionally funded these things. Are advocating for money from those programs to go to the Great American Rail Trail. And Kevin, you've been keeping a record of how much money we have gotten from private, state, federal sources for the Great American Rail Trail over these last 5 years. If you'd like to share that figure.
Yeah, we have been tracking, and we've seen over $161 million of investment, not including the amazing $80 million on the Market Street Bridge too, to redevelop that. And that is over 5 years, and that's just continuing to grow.
Well, the Market Street Bridge is such a wonderful example, because as we've been advocating, you know, anytime you do a bridge, you should have inclusion of a bike ped trail crossing. But in the instance of the Market Street, we didn't have to tell them, they told us that, oh, we're going to do this. How do we do this? We want to do this. And so that shows how far we've come in this kind of advocacy, how far local communities have come. The people of Steubenville on one side of the Ohio, the people of Rearton on the other side of the Ohio. It's really very, very exciting, and will continue to be so.
Yeah, it's really powerful to see. And I think we've got the bridges, we've got this hard really hard infrastructure to get done. But we also have seen, I think, the advocacy, it's like that partnership to advocacy thread where it's brought people together in support of stuck projects, right? There are projects that people have wanted to see move forward for decades. And I think we've heard, especially in Nebraska, I'm going to flip it to you, Kevin, we've heard in Nebraska from folks like, you've brought this back to life. The Great American Rail Trail has helped breathe life into some of these advocacy efforts.
Yeah, looking specifically at the Mopac Gap, which is the last real big connection in the trail between Lincoln and Omaha, the two major population centers of the state. There had been visions of and efforts to connect that last 15 miles or so over the last 20, 30 years. And it really took the vision of many local nonprofit organizations seeing what it means to be part of this national vision to then elevate that, getting funding from the state legislature, working with the Natural Resources District to move that. We had a huge win this year to approve that route. So we're celebrating that with all of our partners in Nebraska.
Like Maryann said, it's emboldening, right? It's giving people permission to think really big. And I want to close this out, Maryann, with the Beverly Bridge in Washington, which was one of the big early wins of the Great American Rail Trail. And I would argue from where I sit that the Great American Rail Trail also gave the agencies and the governor's office and the state legislature the permission to think big. Would you second that?
We were definitely a partner in that, a part of that. They had that was something they wanted to do, but RTC's, the Great American Rail Trail and RTC's involvement helped bring that over the finish line. And we were privileged to be invited to share the podium with the governor, Governor Jay Inslee of Washington, as that bridge was dedicated. And this was the only way across the Columbia River. And it was the restoration of a railroad bridge from the old Milwaukee Road. And it's just a wonderful facility, just amazing. And it's not just going to be for people riding across the country. It's a local link too. There are people who live on one side of the bridge who have to go to the orchards on the other side to help harvest those crops. And now instead of having to go miles around to hit an interstate bridge, they can go right across to their where their jobs are. And that's really very exciting. And that's the dual value of the result of our advocacy. It's for the people who live there. It's for the people who are going there. It's really for all of us.
Well, it's the magic of the Great American Rail Trail. I think it can spark and capture people's imagination while also bringing such incredible benefit to the local communities and to the people who live right there along the route. And so there's just constantly wins and positives for everyone. Well, we're going to take that sentiment, that feel-good, magical sentiment, and shift into the final segment where we're talking about the people who are using this trail. And we're going to take a look at Brit Green's story. She is a veteran who rode across the country on the Great American Rail Trail in 2023 summer with the Warrior Expeditions, which has been just an incredible partner of Rails to Trails Conservancy for the past several years. We have had the privilege and honor of helping get about a little bit more than 2 dozen veterans across the country. And I think the benefit and the power of their story to the local communities who are organizing around the trail, and then vice versa, their ability to make these connections with people on the ground has just been incredible and invaluable. So let's take a look at Brit's story.
My name is Brit Green. I'm from Tacoma, Washington. In 2023, I rode my bike across the country on the Great American Rail Trail. This experience truly was transformative for me, and I am incredibly grateful to Rails to Trails and to Warrior Expeditions for bringing that to life. There is no way that I could have done this without the support of the infrastructure and the people and the positivity along the way. It was a pretty unique opportunity to spend time with some veterans and to end up forming some really meaningful connections. When you're on a trail, there is just a level of calm and peace in order to really enjoy the experience, and I think to take advantage of some of the benefits of well-being and connectedness. You need to have like a baseline element of safety. The road is kind of like the inverse of that. I found in those moments that I was a little bit more focused on being safe instead of just like enjoying the experience and the ease that comes with knowing that you have kind of like a protected barrier and corridor to move through. I think it's important to finish the gaps along the Great American Rail Trail to really think about like prioritizing health and safety of the people that are going to be using the trail. It's an amazing investment in building communities and even local economies. It becomes kind of like this reinforcing this positive cycle of, those communities benefiting from the folks that are using the trail as well as the people that are using the trail, being able to rely on those amenities. The community piece is also huge. Trails become kind of like a central space for people to meet. We came in contact with so many people from Rails to Trails and supported veterans. And then those individuals to have such like excitement and energy about the trail, but also about like their city and wanting to take us out to dinner and to show us their city. It's just kind of this amazing like way to get to know people.
Captures it so perfectly. I go back to when we introduced this concept and we talked about how special it was to be able to experience the country at human speed, right? Whether that's in your sneakers or on a bicycle, and the intimacy of that connection. And I think she just captures that perfectly. I'm excited to bring Cass Marburger, RTC's communications director, into the conversation because Brit's story it's really special, but it's not unique. We hear from people all the time who are doing the trail, want to do the trail, can't wait to do the trail, want to do the trail with their grandkids. The list is endless. So Cass, what are we hearing out there? What are people saying about why this trail matters?
Oh, we're hearing so much. And Brit really does say it perfectly. It's just so nice to hear her talk about just the connection to herself and to nature and to communities and to the people that she was with on the trail. And I think that that is something that we hear echoed constantly. We are forever getting messages of people who are really excited to walk or bike or run alone with friends, with family, on the trails. And if we get messages that say they can't wait to do the whole thing, they can't wait to do a specific segment, they're looking for ways to get out there and connect. And I just think that's really beautiful and it's really special.
It is so special. And what I love, one of the things I feel like we hear from folks is I've always wanted to experience the country this way, but I'm not comfortable doing it on road, or it feels like that's, out of my skill set. But the idea that there's a multi-use trail, that there's really a rail trail, and 80+% of the route is rail trail corridor, right, Kevin? Correct me if I'm wrong here. That's the stat I have in my mind. It's close to that. We'll just go with it. But that gives people a level of comfort because they understand it's separated from vehicle traffic. They understand that, there are certainly mountainous areas, but we're doing our best to keep it at a reasonable grade. It's still work, but it's going to be a little bit different than doing this on the side of the highway. And in order for this to be successful, people have to be excited about it. And I want to raise, Kevin, the time that we were on the trail and we met our friend from the Netherlands, right? Who was
in Indiana, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we just happened to be there scouting our tour a couple years ago, and we saw this guy loaded down maybe 5 miles outside of town. And we went into town and we saw him pull in. And this poor man had no idea that these two very excitable American strangers were going to hey, what are you doing? I'm biking across the country. Where are you from? The Netherlands. Holy cow. That was early on too. And it felt like, oh, there's something really happening here.
Yeah, there's something happening here and it's catching fire. And Cass, one of the things that we do in our jobs in the communication space is engage with folks on social and just thinking about like, what are people saying? They pop up and they want to know more. What are they looking for?
I think, really, when you put something this iconic out into the world, people are just very excited. They cannot wait to do it. And so what we are hearing constantly, a few are on a piece of paper here, but it's just like, I love it. I am so excited to walk it. This would be an amazing way to familiarize folks with the communities that they're going to find along the way. I can't wait to ride the whole thing. It's just every single time we put something out into the world or we announce a new segment that's opening, we are just getting the most positive, incredible feedback from people. It really is, it's a journey unlike anything else out there. And people are just, they're so eager to do it. They're so eager to experience the trail, the communities, the connection. And I just think that it's just, it's watching the enthusiasm is infectious. I also cannot wait to get out there and do the whole thing.
Well, you did get to enjoy some of it earlier. Sorry, Brandy, but Cass, we were out on the trail, on the Cowboy Trail this year, and I felt like you had a real transformative moment in the town of Battle Creek, Nebraska.
It was amazing. We got to Battle Creek and the people from that community are just so excited to have people come through and see and experience, like they're just so proud of where they live and what they
their
do.
trail. Yeah.
Yes, they're part of the trail. It's just this amazing sense of community pride. So we got there and they were cheering us on. They had brought some local, like, preschool children out to watch us and to see that people were coming to do this. And then we also got to hear incredible things from the people in the community on how they're building out things for people to come and do. So like there was a big talk about the gas station owner who had bought like an incredible pizza oven so that there would be things for people to fill their water bottles, get a piece of pizza, a whole pizza, you know, you're biking a giant trail, but refuel.
Miles, you've earned the pizza.
So I just think like those kind of moments and those pieces of, you wouldn't experience that any other way, right? It's just fantastic.
Well, and what I love about that story in Nebraska is that we keep talking about it's really an incredible national vision. It's also an incredible tool for local engagement, for local community development, for that local pride and really building that local connection and that local pride. And that's what we saw in Battle Creek. We even got cookies and lemonade. It was amazing. But the participation happens in so many forms. It can be actually using the trail, but it can also be accepting and inviting the trail into the community as one of those strategies and as one of those solutions. So I think we're all excited about what happens next, and it feels like the country is excited about what happens next. And with that, Kevin, I think we're going to wrap it up and talk a little bit about what happens next. Let's envision 5 years from now, 10 years from now, what does it look like out there?
We are closing gaps. We are very excited to get that movement happening. I think encouraging more people to go out there and use it. So trail tourism is a big thing that we're going to be focusing on in the next couple of years. And what does it look like for a community to really invest in the infrastructure, not just the trail, but the places to stay and the places for people to contribute to the local economy and to fill up their water bottles, what you said. That is exciting. Continuing to work with the Warrior Expeditions, I think it's really fun what Brit was sharing. They have been such great partners and they're great ambassadors too. And these towns rally around having such feel-good stories to say, hey, these people served our country and now they're out here enjoying what we've helped create for them. I want to see so much more of that too.
Yeah, it's really getting towns ready to receive all of this greatness, helping towns unlock their segment of the trail, helping people tap into really the joy that this infrastructure can create for people and for places and for the whole country. It feels like, we're right on the precipice of so much more impact. It's incredible. And I go back to you, how do you measure the progress of something at this scale? And to some degree, it's almost immeasurable, right? It's the lives touched. It's the people who, we have a wonderful friend, Whitney Washington, who got the idea to bike across the country and now has become like a bike advocate on a whole nother level because of this concept, and the fact that this even existed kind of gave her the inspiration. So just more of that. But I think there's real transformative change happening, and it's almost exponential, the growth. So we're counting miles, and we're counting money, and we're counting how the investment is happening to move those miles forward. But some of the pieces we can't count come from just really how people's hearts and their minds are touched by this in so many ways. One of the things we hear from folks is, how can I help? What can I do to get this done? Can I go out there and build a section? And that is not probably the most effective way to help. But the most effective ways to help are really donating to help this work continue, to push this forward. This is an enormous project. And at the national level, Kevin and the entire team at RTC is constantly working with partners, building those coalitions, building those partnerships, working on the advocacy, working on really like some of the negotiations around county lines and regional lines, stuff that there aren't people kind of assigned to those jobs, helping with the storytelling, helping get people excited about this. There's just so many layers of the work that it takes to do something at this scale. But then also we need to keep showing that people want this. We have a pledge on our website where we're just getting people to sign and say, this is important to me, because that carries a lot of weight with decision makers and elected officials. We need to show that real people will benefit from this project and want to see this done. So railstotrails.org/Great American or greatamericanrailtrail.org, there is a take action section. And you can donate, you can learn more, you can sign the pledge, and every little bit, every little action, every little story that we get about how this trail is making a difference really does make a difference. Kevin, anything else you want to add?
You summed that up really well. I think just 5 years into this project, I'm continually heartened by the response we get. And I'm lucky to get to travel around to a lot of this country to see and meet folks. And I've made a lot of personal friends that way, but I feel like it's 5 years in, just the reception that this project has gotten it feels like a real personal and professional win for all of us at RTC and outside. So I'm really excited to see where we continue to go. And thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for watching, and Happy New Year.